Food security in Australia. Our government defines food security as when all people at all times have both physical and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Implicit in food security are three core themes. First, sustainability. This means producing food in a manner that does not compromise the ability of our natural systems to continue delivering healthy, sustainable food for us now and into the future. Secondly, accessibility. This means that our governments encourage or create policies, infrastructure and prices to ensure all citizens, regardless of their socio-economic background, can access the food that they need. Thirdly, acceptability. This means culturally acceptable food produced and obtained in ways that don't compromise people's dignity, self-respect, or human rights. The food choices we make shape the security of our food supply. What we eat tests the limits of our ecosystems, the nature of our trade, our food consumer culture, and the state of our health. It also generates wastes, which in turn threaten the ecosystems we depend upon for food. Let's begin by examining how biophysical limits relate to food security. Australia is a unique and ancient landmass with poor soils and extreme climatic variability. To make this landscape productive and dependable at a scale that feeds the nation and creates surplus, the following inputs are used. Oil-based and chemical fertilisers, particularly nitrogen, phosphorus and sulphate. 1 litre of oil makes 1 kilogram of fertiliser. Water. 70% of Australia's water is used in irrigation for food. Non-Indigenous plants and animals such as wheat and cattle. Current practices cause irreversible environmental damage. One suggestion for addressing the damage is a business-as-usual approach, where the overall industrial system and methods stay the same, but we change what we grow and increase our use of inputs to manage the declining productivity of the ecosystem. But future generations will inherit the damage. Oil-based fertilisers will run out. Soil takes thousands of years to regenerate, and business as usual can't go on forever because Australia's ecosystems have limits. Increasing productivity is not the answer to securing a sustainable food future. We need to increase resilience and sustainability in food production by improved water use and management in agriculture, tackling the problem of soil nutrition, reducing the reliance on oil-based fertilisers, accumulating local and Indigenous knowledge and experience, and ensuring sustainable management of natural resources. A typical meal. How does this relate to food security and biophysical limits? Our everyday food choices do make a difference. Think about what you buy and eat. Support producers who are active in environmentally friendly farming and industries. Find out more information and ask more questions about the environmental cost of your food. A typical meal, such as this one, can have a profound effect. Consider what it really takes to get it to your plate. Next, we look at trade and food security. Globally, enough food is produced to feed the world. However, it is distributed inequitably between countries and communities. Consider your coffee. Worldwide, many large landholders and corporations are forcing poor farmers to grow commodity crops like coffee instead of food crops, leaving them vulnerable to global price fluctuations. These policies of trade liberalisation and corporate globalisation have systematically marginalised primary producers in developing countries through market monopolisation, intellectual property patents, and cash cropping. People around the world are realising that transnational corporations are gaining power and ascendancy over individuals and nations' food security. For example, activist and scientist Vandana Shiva claims the introduction of GM patented seeds into India from transnational corporations like Monsanto have directly led to the suicides of 200,000 farmers in the last decade. The widespread conversion of food crops to biofuels is also contributing to the global food crisis. So, what can you do? When you purchase items such as coffee, tea, and spices, make sure they are fair trade certified or locally grown. As members of democratic society, we need to encourage our elected representatives to support fair, not free trade. Fair trade not only improves the lives of producers overseas. By adhering to fair trade principles, Australia can improve its international diplomatic relations and national security, both of which are vital to a secure food future. Now think about that salad back on the meal tray. While much of our fresh produce is grown in Australia, in the last decade our food imports have increased, while exports have rapidly decreased. Climate change projections suggest this trend will continue. So, what can you do? Support locally produced, organic and sustainable agricultural products from farmers' markets and food cooperatives. Engage with civil society food groups and help spread the food security message. Next, we look at how consumer culture affects food security. Consider this fruit salad. As mentioned, much of our fresh produce is transported from overseas. In fact, did you know that over a third of fruit and around 20% of vegetables consumed in Australia are imported? In the second half of 2009, Australia imported fruit and vegetables worth $826 million, and the number of imports is rising every year. This is all because capitalist consumer culture encourages the selection of food suppliers based on an economic gain and efficiency rather than health or sustainability concerns. The free movement of goods around the world and the culturally created expectation that consumers should always have access to the types and variety of food they desire at all times has resulted in an unsustainable food supply system. The international transport of food is greenhouse gas emissions intensive, contributing to global warming. It also results in reduced food quality, especially for fruit and vegetables. Current consumer culture has also perpetuated the expectation that fruit and vegetables should look perfect. Hence, large quantities of produce get thrown away before even reaching us. So, what can you do? Buy locally produced food where available and try to limit your consumption of out-of-season produce. Campaign for large food retailers to introduce a labelling system so that you can identify what's local and what's not. The food products that are most regularly and effectively marketed to consumers are often highly processed. Take this can of soft drink, for example. Soft drink companies use a range of marketing techniques to increase sales, including ease of accessibility to a variety of venues, persistent broadcast advertising, links with movies and popular bands, sponsorship of major events, and the targeting of schools through vending machines. With the added factor of peer pressure, pre-teens and young adults are particularly susceptible to this forceful advertising. This is problematic for three main reasons. 1. Soft drinks and other highly processed foods are commonly high in fat and/or sugar, encouraging obesity. 2. These products are often globally standardized, which encourages the spread of monocultures. And 3. Ingredients are often sourced internationally, discouraging local sourcing. So, what can you do? Lobbying governments to increase and improve public education campaigns about healthy food choices. Campaign for your local food retailers to advertise responsibly and disclose the health and environmental implications of their products. Now, to food security and health. Food security suggests that all people should have access to food that is nutritious and safe. All people, from the Alice to Albany, from Adelaide to Araluen. All of these items can be found in supermarkets as highly processed products. Unfortunately, supermarkets full of highly processed, fat and sugar-dense foods more often than not offer cheaper and more convenient options. Partly due to lack of access to nutritious food, obesity is affecting the health and well-being of millions of Australians. Recent research estimates that the total direct cost of overweight and obesity in Australia is $57 billion per year. Let's consider how virtuous the potato in this mash is. Next time you're in the supermarket, have a closer look. You may be surprised. For the same weight of foodstuff in these frozen chips, you pay less for the bare potato. Considering the comparison of ingredients, the plain potato is certainly the better option. Do you really want all of these ingredients on your potatoes? Will this soft drink do more than quench your thirst? A can of Lift contains 28 grams of sugar. Consuming too much sugar can cause serious health conditions such as diabetes, obesity and heart disease. On the other hand, water is free and contains no sugar. The prospects for the health of future generations looks grim, so long as sugar is allowed to infiltrate more and more items on the supermarket shelf. So, what can you do? You can lobby the government to subsidise fresh, nutritious food and to educate the public about obtaining, producing and cooking healthy food. You can check labels, cook more, and educate others to do the same. You can also try to buy food more direct from the farmer. Let's take a look at waste and food security. How about that beef? Chances are it was produced in a feedlot. That means lots of cows crammed together and fed lots of grain. Grain is not part of a cow's natural diets, so it contributes to their emitting environmentally harmful gases. In fact, livestock, predominantly feedlot beef, produce 18% of all greenhouse gas emissions and 37% of global methane emissions. Furthermore, feedlots are highly energy inefficient. Consider this. You have to grow the grain, the production of which generates millions of tons of CO2 in fertiliser and uses up land that could be used for crops to feed humans, or worse, pristine rainforests. You then have to transport that grain to the feedlots, in the process using lots of oil. And this is all just to speed up production times to meet growing consumer demand for meat. Produced in this way, the amount of meat on that plate generates the same quantity of emissions from driving a car for 45 minutes, and its production requires the same amount of energy needed to power a 100-watt light bulb for 3 days. The The perpetuation of practices like these will not ensure the sustainable food supply Australians deserve. So, what can you do? You could cut down on meat or eat less energy and emissions intensive meat, for example, free-range and organic chicken or sustainably produced kangaroo. When purchasing meat, choose pastured products. This means the animals roam freely and eat green grass, just as nature intended. As they roam, pastured cows trample decaying matter in the soil, thereby helping store CO2 in the ground. Pastured cows' overall emissions are lower than feedlot cows because the energy and pollution-intensive process of growing and transporting feed is omitted. Whilst pastured meat costs more, by reducing your overall meat consumption, it can work out at the same price. According to researchers, a transition to pasture-fed livestock could actually increase the amount of carbon stored in the ground by 2%. That's double what's needed to offset global carbon emissions. Now, what about that salad? For 50 grams of supermarket salad, or rather 5 grams given it's 90% water, you get a cup of plastic packaging, which can take up to 20 years to break down. You also get a cocktail of yucky chemicals, particularly in that lettuce, which is one of Australia's most heavily sprayed veggies. These chemicals not only float around inside you, but accumulate in the environment and can cause havoc. They also prevent crops from mounting natural immunity to pests, thereby increasing their vulnerability to harmful bugs. A food production system based on heavy chemicals and excess packaging doesn't sound very secure, does it? So, what can you do? You can grow your own veggies at home. Purchase more locally grown organic produce. By growing and purchasing locally and organically, you're supporting a production system that, when compared to conventional production, uses 50% the energy, is more water efficient, eliminates harmful chemical runoff, can store up to 3 times more carbon in the ground, and generates 1/3 the negative external costs. Now, let's consider how much of this meal will be wasted in monetary terms. Every year, Australians throw away $5 billion in food. Assuming our current population eats 3 meals per day, that means we bin almost $1.50 of every meal. This meal costs $12, so say goodbye to 12% of it. When combined, all of our wasted food money is more than we spend on digital equipment and the Australian Army. It's also enough to meet the financial shortfall of the UN Emergency Relief Fund. Our food waste is also equivalent to the emissions produced by the Australian steel and iron industry. Throwing food and money down the drain is not compatible with ensuring a reliable, sustainable and secure food supply for future generations. So, what can you do? Well, the good thing is that 93% of Australians are prepared to take action to reduce food waste. Wasted food is easily avoidable. Simple strategies such as weekly menu planning before shopping, saving and reusing leftovers, and sharing surplus food with others can go a long way to reducing food waste. You can also avoid excessive food waste going to landfill where it emits harmful greenhouse gases by starting your own backyard compost and incorporating your food scraps back into the soil. Using recyclable bags and packaging to gather your food, and by recycling food packaging where possible. So, we've come full circle. As you have seen, food security has many different components, and you as consumers affect them all with every purchase you make and every mouthful you take. Let's work together with our government and by putting your money where your mouth is to create a secure food future. Your choice does make a difference.
Let's go.